Good day to you. Welcome to mrdannylim.blogspot.sg. Today we will be touching on a Sec 3 math topic, solving equation by completing the square. Have you ever wondered what do we mean when we say complete the square? And why do we need to complete the square? I'm going to answer these two questions today. Let's dive in and look at example 1. We have x minus 3 bracket square on one side and 25 on the other. When we write an equation this way, what do we mean? Have you thought about it? Or they are just letters and numbers to you? To oversimplify this a bit so that you can understand, let's use area as a stepping stone. Now if we look at this diagram, it actually means that when we have an equation of x minus 3 bracket square equals 25, it means that we have a square. On each side of the square is x minus 3. And then the area of the square is actually 25. When we look at it this way, it makes a lot of sense now. Since the area of the square is 25, one side must be 5. How do we get 5? Because we square root the 25. Then we get 5. That means one side of the square is 5. Then we use x minus 3 equals to 5. Then we can solve for x. Hence, as long as we make one side of the equation to be a square, we are able to square root the whole equation to find x. Okay, so if we square root both sides of the equation, one side will be x minus 3, the other side will be plus minus square root of 25. Now remember, you need to add a negative because negative 5 times negative 5 will also give you 25. Okay, so x minus 3 is equals to negative 5, x minus 3 is equals to positive 5. Then you solve it, is x equals to minus 2 or x equals to 8. Okay, this is the solution for this question. Now let's go on to example 2. Now example 2, we have x squared plus 6x minus 8 equals to 0. We need to move the 8 to the other side. So we have the left hand side x squared plus 6x, and on the right hand side we have 8. Again, what do we mean when we look at this equation? Let's use area again for as a stepping stone to understand this better. So what is x squared? X squared, it means that we have x times x. So we have a square with x times x and the area is x squared. Okay, the length is x and the width is also x because this is a square. How about 6x? 6x means that it's a rectangle. One side is 6, the other side is x. And of course on the right hand side of the equation, we have simply a value of 8 as an area. Now when we look at it this way, okay, it will give us a better understanding why we are completing the square. Now I need to make the left hand side of the equation to become a square so that I can square root. But if you look at this 6 and this x, you cannot add them together. You add them together, it's going to be a very long rectangle, and this side you cannot make it in a square. So we're going to cut this into 2. Okay, we're going to cut this into 2. We have 3 and 3. And then this side remains as x. Okay, then we were going to shift this 3 into here. And then this 3, we're going to shift into here. Now we nearly got a square already. Because this side we have x plus 3. Here we also have x plus 3. Now we are missing this. Now what is this? Now if you look at this is 3. And we look at this is 3. So this must be 3 squared. Okay, which is 9. Now if we add 3 square here, this will be a complete square. This will be one complete square. And of course, if we add 3 square here, this side we must, on the right hand side, we must also add 3 square so that they are equal because this is an equation. Now, once we have this, we can square root this side, then we can solve for x and we can square root this side. Okay? Now, so the equation will become like that. X squared plus 3x, which is 3x is this, 3 and x, and 3 and x. Okay? So 3x and 3x, which are blue ones, and then the 3 square is the orange one. And this side also plus 3 square. So actually we complete the square, make the square complete by adding 3 square. Once we add this very small square, this will be a complete square and we can do the square root. Now when we do this, what do we have? On the left hand side, actually you can simplify into x plus 3 square, because it's x plus 3 times x plus 3. So x plus 3 square, then this side is 8 plus 9, because 3 square is 9. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, so we have x plus 3 square equals 17, square root both sides. Then we are, see, we have x plus 3, and then we have 17. And then we are going to square root both sides, the left hand side and the right hand side. When we square root this side, it will become x plus 3. Here will be plus minus square root of 17. Then we solve for the equation, x equals to square root 17 minus 3, or x equals to negative square root 17 minus 3. Then we have the answer. Now this is what we mean by completing the square. To complete the square, we added 3 square. Now how did we refine, or how did we get this 3 square? It's actually, we look at the coefficient of x, which is 6. We need to divide by 2 because we divided by 2. So 6 divided by 2 and the whole thing square. And then we have 3 square. Okay? Now, when we what is completing the square? Again, I will tell you, completing the square means that we add a very small area to make the whole thing a square. Once the whole thing is a square, we can square root the thing. Then we can solve for x. That is the purpose of completing the square. Now, why do we need to complete the square? When do we need to complete the square? Now, we complete the square when the solution for x is not a whole number. Now, when we try to factorize this, we will see that there is no way to factorize. If you look at 8, okay, you can have 1 times 8, 2 times 4, and then, yeah, that's it. 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. And then 1 times 8 and 2 times 4 both will not give you 6x. Okay, when you solve for it as factorization, it will not. Because you plus 4 minus 2, you have 2x. Then you have plus 8 minus 1 will give you 7x. And so on and so forth. So there's no way to factorize this. When we can't factorize, then we use complete the square. Okay, complete the square is a faster method, okay, to solve than the formula. Now the formula method is also a good way to solve, but completing the square will be faster because there's no A, B, and C. Okay, now let's move on first. So just to reiterate, if we can factorize, we always factorize. If we cannot factorize, then we use complete the square, because factorizing is always faster. Okay, if we do the factorization and the equation is able to be factorized, then we use factorization. It will be a faster solution because x is a whole number. We use this when the solution for x is not a whole number. Okay, now let's move on to one last example before we wrap up. Now for this example, oops, sorry, give me a minute. Okay, for this example, I'm just going to work it out. Okay, let me use maybe blue. Okay, now how do we work this out? Now this is something that is a little bit different. Okay, now I'm going to work it out slowly with you. First, we need to shift this one over to the right hand side. So we have 2x squared minus 5x equals to negative 1. Then we need the x to be 1. It cannot be 2. Okay, we need it to be 1 in order to complete the square. So we divide everything by 2. So when we divide everything by 2, this will be x squared minus 5x over 2 equals to half. Then we have, this side is 1 already, and we have the coefficient of x, which is minus 5 over 2. Now how do we find complete the square? We get the coefficient of x divide by 2. We need to have this divide by 2 first, which will give you minus 5 over 4. Then this thing, we need to make it into a square because this is only one side. So make it to a square. Okay, so this is the value that we are going to add for completing the square. So we have x square minus 5 over 2x. Then here is plus minus 5 over 4 square. Of course, this side if we plus this side we must also plus minus 5 over 4. Okay, now this side we're going to make it into a square. What this is actually x minus 5 over 4 square. And this side is actually 17 over 16. Okay, now when we have this, we can solve for x already by square rooting both sides. So when we square root this side and square root this side, and here we'll have plus minus, and this will become x minus 5 over 4, and here will be plus minus square root 17 over 16. Okay, now then x will be actually positive 17 over 16 plus 5 over 4, or x is equals to minus 17 over 16 plus 5 over 4. Then x, this side and this side we need to work out. This side will be 2.28 to 3 significant figures. Okay, it's a very long decimal. And then this side will be 0.219, also 3 significant figures. Okay, so this is a solution. Now if you want to add a checking portion to this example, you can actually check by substituting the solution into the equation to see if you get 0. Okay, for example, I'm just going to demonstrate to you. Okay, let's say I want to do checking. Okay, let me draw this. I'm checking now. I already got the solution. I'm just checking for answer. Okay, now I'm just going to put 2, then 2.28, which is our solution for x here, square, minus 5 times 2.28, then plus 1. When we work this out, we should get 0. If we can get 0, that means the solution is correct. If we don't get 0, then something is wrong. You better go back and check whether why is it not 0. Okay, now that's all for today. Now before I call it a day, or before I wrap up, okay, let me change back to normal slide. Okay, now before I wrap up, I just want to reiterate two things that we are going to find out, that we have found out today. Number one, what do we mean by completing the square? Completing the square means that we add a constant to the equation so that we can make one side of the equation to be a square. Now when one side of the equation is the square, then we can square root the thing, then we are able to solve for x. That is the why we need to add something to make it into a complete square. Okay, now then when do we use complete the square? We use complete the square when the solution is not a whole number. Now when you factorize, you cannot factorize, and hence you cannot solve the equation. Now when you cannot solve, then you use complete the square. Okay, thank you very much. I hope today is you learned something just like I did. Okay, so yep, have fun. Thank you.